We have to be willing as leaders to do that as well. So if you're looking right now in your career, your business, and you're going, hey man, I'm not hitting those levels that I want to hit. You might be crushing it with revenue. You might be crushing it with business growth, with market share. It could be whatever the thing is that's important to you right now. But you see other aspects of your life unraveling. You're feeling overwhelmed. You're not connected to your family. You feel like you're losing a sense of yourself. Maybe you feel like you're dying inside. Well, what standard are you holding? Are you saying it's okay to feel like shit on a daily basis? It's okay to have these weak relationships with the important people in my life? If you set a standard and you're not hitting it, it's okay. It's not okay to stay there though. It's important to go, I'm not hitting that standard and this is not acceptable. That's the difference between an amateur and a pro. What's up, my friends? JT DeBolt with you today for the True Driven Podcast, the podcast for the few, the true, the driven, those of us who identify as those true driven. And I say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whatever time it is for you, no matter where you might be tuning in from here on the Big Blue Marble. Thanks as always for joining me. And I really appreciate you guys following us. Some of you for the first time, some of you for a very long time, whether that be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or right here on YouTube, youtube.com/JT DeBolt. I love the YouTube platform as always, because that's where I can bring you more updated and different kind of diverse information. So make sure you're giving us a follow, subscribe, turn on notifications so you can be the first to know and stay in the know as I'm bringing you new and updated information. By the way, how often have you heard the term professional, turning pro, go pro, whatever the thing might be? And I'm not talking about GoPro like the camera. I'm talking about the idea of transforming and going from maybe that amateur lifestyle or that amateur level into the professional ranks. What's the appeal there? There's something about that I think probably is different for every single person, but let's just break it down to the elemental pieces. To be a professional implies that you're at the top echelon of whatever industry, whatever game you might be. Whether that's professional sports. In fact, I got a friend of mine who was a former professional ballerina, for instance, professional artist, professional whatever it might be, professional entrepreneur. In other words, what does that imply? At its core, it implies that you're getting paid for it. This is not just a hobby. This is your profession. This isn't something you moonlight for and moonlight doing. This is what you actually perform on a consistent basis with the energy, the life, and the time on earth you've been given. I think that's important. The question is, are you showing up and performing as a professional? You might be in a professional status, but are you showing up and being that pro? There's some guys in a group called GBRS, Global Battle Research Solutions. DJ Shipley and Cole Fackler, two former Navy SEAL guys and awesome dudes, put together an amazing program. And they actually have a saying, be a pro. Got t-shirts and hats and all kinds of stuff that have that saying on that. And I think it's an important reminder. Be a pro is a really important way to show up. It's a posture to have. It's a behavior. It's an energetic state that we live in. Being an amateur is somebody who just sort of shows up when they feel like it. In fact, come to think of it, amateurs sort of operate primarily from a place of their feelings. I don't feel like it today, or I'm feeling a little under the weather. Maybe they'll kind of half-ass a little bit, mail it in, right? Do the best they can, kind of flying by the seat of their pants. And by the way, there's some value to that. I'm not saying that there's nothing of value to fly by the seat of your pants occasionally. But a professional has a different approach. A professional knows that the separation is in the preparation. There's an old saying, the separation is in the preparation. So a pro is going to actually naturally be a lot more prepared. What does that look like? What do we need that to look like in our business, our lives, the missions, that we're working on a daily basis? I think it's important to step back and ask that question. Because if you're here to accomplish something significant, which I'm going to assume you are, otherwise you wouldn't be listening and tuning into the podcast in the first place. For those of you true drivens that are in the program, you already know that you've applied yourself, committed yourself to something significant, something that's requiring all of your efforts and the best of everything that you have to bear. Your life force is applied to something that is so worth committing to that it's gone from being a goal, it's evolved from being a dream, and now it's a mission. You're attacking that with that level of conviction that's required that only a professional can bring. When we talk about the separations in the preparation, yeah, it means showing up every single day. It means doing the small, mundane things. It means taking pride in what you do. I've said this from stage before, and I'm sure you've heard other people say it as well. One of the most important differentiators between a pro and an amateur. Amateurs will set goals. They may not hit them, they might. But the difference between a pro and an amateur is a pro sets standards. They hold themselves to high standards. Could be something as simple as how they re-rack the weights in the gym. Getting there early, showing up early, leaving late. Maybe not the first one and the last one to go, but somebody who's there fully committed to the mission. Somebody who carries themselves with a sense of pride and self-respect. Carries themselves with a sense of personal ownership. Carries themselves with a sense of commitment to personal excellence. You know, it's to truly be excellent. If you think about the term excellence, if you really think about what that embodies, what does it mean to you? What does it look like? How would you know? Think of it this way. Is it videotapable? If there was a hidden camera capturing you, how would you know when you saw excellence, according to your definition of that word? What would it look like? What would it sound like? How would you speak? How would you conduct yourself? Would you conduct yourself in a certain way different from how you show up on the daily basis? Because if there's a difference between your version of the word excellence and how you show up on a regular basis, that's a pretty good indication that you might be playing the game as an amateur. Now, I'm not calling you an amateur. I'm saying the behavior level, the performance level of an amateur. Trust me, I'll bet we could go into any of the ranks of any kind of professional organization. Could be professional sports, professional anything. And we could ask them, and if we got a true, honest answer, off the record, do you have anybody in this organization who shows up and acts like an amateur? There's probably one or two. There's probably a few, very few, but there would likely be those lower percentile folks, the lower 1%, right? Maybe you could find a few amateurs. Now, in the very high-performing organizations, they have a tendency to root that kind of behavior out and do one of several things. First, identify it because they've actually set those standards. If you don't have standards, then you're never going to know whether or not you're performing at the level of a professional. You have to set standards, not impossible standards, high standards of excellence. You decide those for what they're going to be for yourself, but also for your organization. And you're very clear in articulating and communicating that so that everybody that's on the mission with you is in lockstep and stepping up to and living those standards. The first thing is you have to have the standards. The second thing is you have to be able to see that the people are actually performing at those. In other words, not looking and turning a blind eye to them or turning away from them when you see them. You have to be willing to look at them objectively and say, yeah, that's not working. You're below standard. Now, something I use as an entrepreneur is what we call KPIs, key performance indicators. You've probably heard of this before. If you don't have KPIs, those are actual metrics that you live to and arrive and perform at, or you don't. If you're below KPI, it doesn't make you a bad person. It means you got to up-level your performance. If you're not clear on what the KPIs are, and if the organization's not articulating what those are, or you are being blind and ignorant to those, that is performing and behaving as an amateur. Again, I want to be clear on this. We're not calling anybody an amateur or a pro. We're saying, are you behaving as? We're talking about behaviors. One of the most important leadership aspects, leadership behaviors that I want to instill in you is this idea that we're going to stop labeling people and calling them names and this gaslighting nature that seems to be fucking prevalent all throughout society. As leaders, we don't have that kind of luxury to be lazy like that. I don't care what human nature states. Yeah, it's human nature to be judgmental. It's human nature to label people. That's great for the rest of the world, but for true drivens, for leaders, we don't have that luxury. You and I have to be able to think critically and put that emotional bullshit aside, that drama aside, and say, okay, what about this person's behavior needs to be corrected? And how might we help them nurture that correction, facilitate that correction so that they can go from being up here to getting on or above standard? That's the act of a professional. The ability to not just set standards, but communicate the standards and hold those standards. And when the standard drops, instead of berating the person or cutting them loose, investing in them, helping them recognize that they're below standard, let them know what the standard is and help them get to that place, investing in their skills, investing in their knowledge, investing in in whatever it is, their training, whatever is necessary to get to that level. But can you see how we'd have to do that for ourselves first as well? We have to be willing as leaders to do that as well. So if you're looking right now in your career, your business, and you're going, hey man, I'm not hitting those levels that I want to hit. You might be crushing it with revenue. You might be crushing it with business growth, with market share. It could be whatever the thing is that's important to you right now. But you see other aspects of your life unraveling. You're feeling overwhelmed. You're not connected to your family. You feel like you're losing a sense of yourself. Maybe you feel like you're dying inside. Well, what standard are you holding? Are you saying it's okay to feel like shit on a daily basis? It's okay to have these weak relationships with the important people in my life? If you set a standard and you're not hitting it, it's okay. It's not okay to stay there though. It's important to go, I'm not hitting that standard and this is not acceptable. That's the difference between an amateur and a pro. An amateur will be like, I don't know. It's not my fault. A pro takes ownership. A pro knows that if the standard's not there, they're not operating high enough. If the standard's been defined, that is, and they're not getting there, now it's time to correct the behavior. It means training. It means preparing. It means doing all those things, of course. When we say the preparation, the separations and the preparation, that's exactly what we're talking about. But it's not enough just to work yourself to the bone. It's not just enough to crack the whip on your organization, your teams, and say, hey, you guys are underperforming. What about them is underperforming? Set the standard, maintain the standard, communicate the standard, of course, and help train to the standard or above and beyond it. That's what it means to be a pro. There's another nuance to this, and you guys have probably heard me talk about this more than a lot. In fact, I just talked about it in the previous episode, if you guys heard it last week when it dropped. And that was this. A professional has a sense of conviction to what they do. An amateur, they're going to get emotional when things don't go their way. They might get fired up and excited and angry when things fell apart, when they lost, when they didn't meet the standard. They might get angry and upset, get all full of energy and vigor. But what about in the mundane times? What about after the excitement of the start? What about well before the finish line's even in sight? You know, the doldrums, as we call it. What about those times? A professional maintains a sense of conviction on the daily basis. And when they feel that conviction slip, and it will, they hold themselves to the standard of knowing that they are setting the example for the entire people around them, even if they are a solo show. Guys, you have to understand this. One thing that's so important about being a true driven is we are always on the clock. We're always on the stage, so to speak. We're always on the field of play. Even if you're a solopreneur, even if you're a solo person show, one man, one woman show, doesn't matter. You are setting the tone for the rest of the world. The energy you give off, the way you talk, the way you carry yourself, the way you enter a room, it's evident to the people around you as a true driven that you are a person of conviction. Remember what I said in the last episode? Conviction is clarity plus commitment. Now, other people are going to experience it as confidence. They're going to see you as a confident person. That's cool, I guess. But here's the good news. This is the best news ever. You don't even have to feel confident. You could be going through the toughest time of your life as long as you have clarity on where you are, what you stand for, and where you're going, and commitment to the mission. That's all you need. Your confidence could be in the fucking sink. Everybody else around you is going to go, wow, that person's really confident. They got their shit together. They have the it factor. When in fact, all it is conviction. You don't have to freaking fly the flag. You don't have to pound your chest. You don't have to act with bravado and ego and try to prove yourself as the alpha of the room. Any of that other bullshit. All you need are those two elements. The clarity of the mission, where you are, what you stand for, what you're about, and where you're going, right? Clarity. And of course, the commitment to it. 100%. I'm committed to this fucking thing. You've got that, dude. Guess what? Game over. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to go through tough times. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get challenged or get knocked off the horse. That's not what we're saying. But that's the difference between a professional and an amateur. An amateur always has to feel good, always has to be propped up, always needs compliments from other people, external verification or some sort of, accolade or acknowledgement from somebody else telling them they're good enough. A true professional does not need that shit. If they get it, hey, good. Money in the bank, I guess. Nice for you to say. You may not even recognize it because you're so committed to the fucking mission and so clear on where you're going and what you're about that kind of stuff presents itself almost as noise, unnecessary fluff. That's the beautiful part. Now, yeah, you might have certain personality types that need that kind of shit. I get it. Doesn't mean you're not a true driven. Just be careful if you're a person who constantly needs to be stroked, constantly needs to be fed compliments. That kind of stuff, it's a very, very dangerous, slippery slope. We're going to have a different conversation on a different podcast about that. I'm not going to get into it today. The point is this. An amateur is constantly led by their feelings, constantly led by other people's opinions, constantly led by the temperature in the room. A professional leads the way. A professional knows it's not just the preparation that creates the separation. It's also the clarity and the commitment that come through the conviction to the mission. Clear on who they are, clear on what they stand for, clear on what they're about, and clear about where they are going. Does that mean that you have all the answers? No. Does it mean that you have every solution every time? No. Does it mean that you will fuck up? Absolutely, yes, you will. But it means that even in the face of great disappointment, even in the face of a great setback, you will find the way because you will do the evaluative process, step back, find what worked, what didn't work, make the tweaks so that you can adjust and move forward. It's leadership, man. That's what it boils down to. Professionals and amateurs, they're human beings, but it's really more of a collection of behaviors. It's a belief system. So you might call somebody an amateur, you might call somebody a professional. They may actually have the title professional this, professional that. It's possible. But at the end of the day, the real elemental, what it boils down to is the behavior, the posture, the way of being. The question is whether you've hit a level of professionalism yet, whether you're making the millions of bucks yet or not. Are you showing up as an amateur or are you showing up as a professional? If you're showing up as an amateur on a consistent basis, it's going to be a very long, painful road. If, on the other hand, you're showing up as a professional, committed to the process, clear on where you're going, constantly training, constantly developing skills, constantly refining and committing yourself to the process with that sense of conviction and showing up every single day with a fuck yeah in your heart, yeah, baby, that's going to be the path that will take you to the professional levels faster than anything else. Doesn't matter what your background is, doesn't matter what your resource levels look like, doesn't matter who you're connected to. Showing up like a professional will serve as that bow wave that will separate you from everybody else, because you have the way of showing up. You're holding yourself to higher standards, communicating those standards, and staying connected to and committed to those standards each and every single day. Amateurs and professionals, they're different people in the way they behave, the way they think, the way they operate. So behave, think, and operate like a professional today and every single day. And that's where you go to that next level in your business, your life, whatever level you're looking for better performance in, right here, right now. All right, my friends, that's what I got for you today. Make sure you share this message far and wide. If this worked for you, give me a like and a subscribe. Turn on those notifications so you can be the first to know and stay in the know when I bring new content to you. And remember, no matter what course you fly in life, fly high, fly fast, fly far, stay driven.